down mode. People have lost their businesses, their jobs. Some have lost their lives or their health. So filing the FAFSA might be that little piece that if all of a sudden your world fell apart and you need some funding or some grants or such to keep your kids in college, which I actually have had a parent that happened to when she was waiting for a liver transplant and was in a coma. You just never know what life is going to throw at you. So in my personal opinion, everyone should file the FAFSA. So, and
oh, Luann, we can't hear you.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, no, now we can. Okay, for a second we couldn't. Go ahead.
This is just an email testimonial that a client in New York had sent me. As he had sent it to one of his friends. And, I love Bruce. He was a mess, as he says. He did everything. He filed the FAFSA, filed the CSS. He has twins. One student did his whole complete FAFSA, and then Bruce did it for his daughter. And they were both so different and came up with such different EFCs. And of course, he used the DRT, the data retrieval tool, so he couldn't see what the figures were. And he thought, there's got to be something wrong here. So he found me online somehow, interviewed a couple of us, and decided to hire me. And we've become very good friends. It's that reality. Everybody, you'll see 1,000 different people on the Facebook page say, oh, it's so easy. It takes 15 minutes. I don't see what everybody's making such a big deal about. If you've got a very simple, you have a W-2 employee job, you've got a little bit of money in the bank, maybe you've got a 529 plan, you've got one child going off to college, and that's it. Systematically just go through it line by line, take your time, read the directions, and you'll be fine. But in this case, here's Bruce, he and his wife, 2 business owners, taking care of an elderly parent who needed a lot of time and such. They lost a lot of income, and this was in 2018. His CPA made a pretty big mistake on his taxes, so submitted for an amended tax return. Bruce didn't know that he could go ahead and make a correction to let the schools know that, hey, my EFC just reduced quite a bit because of, and he could document what happened. But then he also, because of life in general, we could document the difference between his 2018 and 2019 income had dropped substantially. And then here we have 2020, where his wife's income dropped to 0. And so we were able to document all of that, which meant that we went special circumstances and extenuating circumstances form and such, so that the ultimate is that his son is attending Boston College for $30,000 a year. It was $78,000. So we were able to change the offer for $112,000 over the 4 years. And his daughter's going to a SUNY state school, and she got, an additional $5,000 a year from the documented corrections that we filed for the FAFSA, and then, the appeal process. So don't get guilted if you think that you need to reach out for somebody to help you, especially if you have maybe, some other extenuating circumstances that you just want to make sure that, hey, I don't miss out on any aid or such. Because, Bruce's $28,000 per year was in financial need-based aid. that he had no idea that he was eligible for. So other than that reason to file the FAFSA, you can help your student establish credit. It's going to help with cash flow, especially now for people that have lost their jobs or had their income change dramatically. There's so many different reasons. And you know what? It's not for everybody, but for many, it's going to be that little piece that's going to help you get your kids through the 4 years with just maybe a little bit less financial stress. So why do we file the FAFSA? We want that. You've heard the EFC. What the heck is the EFC? The expected family contribution. So it's just the federal government's way of taking all of this data, your financials and your student, and calculating how much of our government assistance do you need, so that and where do you fall on the poverty level, pure and simple. So if you've got I can guarantee nobody is going to like their EFC. Nobody does, whether it's high, whether it's medium, whether it's low, or in the case of a 0. If you have a 0 EFC, that means that you made less than $27,000 for the year. And I certainly don't want to have those kind of struggles. So everybody's got a little bit of burden, but being able to have a 0 EFC does not mean that you're not going to pay anything for college. So it's going to boil down to school selection and how much of that financial need are they going to meet once they've reduced the EFC from the cost of attendance. So the EFC number is important to know, but it's more important to know 4 years ago than it is right now, because it would have helped you to do a little bit deeper planning to get to this point. So with a 0 EFC, what are you going to get? I hear people say, well, I didn't get anything from FAFSA. You really don't. It's just a federal government creating forms. Here's spitting out data, and here's this number that they're going to send to the schools that you've identified. And then those schools are going to see, well, are you eligible for a Pell Grant, which is the free money from the government. The maximum Pell Grant for this year is $6,345. So that's not going to go very far if you're looking at a, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year school. So then if you might get offered work study, and typically, if you are going to qualify for financial need-based aid, you'll get awarded some work study. It might be a couple of $1,000s. But I really don't like the financial aid awards that deduct that work study from, so that you think, okay, that's $2,000 less that I have to pay. It really isn't, because that money goes to your student for, extra expenses, for their pocket money and such. So you still have to come up with that out of pocket to pay what is due at the school. And then the student loans, if you have financial need, then you can get up to $3,500 as a freshman in a subsidized loan, which is 0% interest while they're in school, in addition to a $2,000 unsubsidized loan, which is, it starts accruing interest from the time that it's dispersed. So speaking of that, great news, everybody, shout it from the rooftops. The fee for the Stafford student loan was reduced. October 1st, 2020 I had a little asterisk as I was going through the slides earlier, Debbie, and I thought, oh, that's right. let me look to see, did they announce it?
What did it go from?
You're gonna laugh. It was 1.059%. It's now 1.057%.
Okay.
So that's my little comic relief there. So as a freshman, your student can receive $5,500 of the Stafford, student loan. That's going to be dispersed, cut in half for each semester. The fee is going to be deducted from that $2,750, and then you're going to, if it's an unsubsidized loan, the interest rate for this year is at 2.75%, which is really, it's the lowest it's ever been. So, so that's a good thing. It's got a lifetime cap of 8.5%. So it can go up. It's been much higher, but it's never been this low. So they can get a maximum overall debt of $31,000. If your student graduates in 4 years, that's $27,000. But if they need an additional semester or such, they can take out an additional $4,000 in an unsubsidized loan. And that's the maximum that they can receive as a undergrad. So if you see these figures, I know that your mind is thinking, but it costs, they're saying that it's like $30,000 for the first year at the school my student is looking at, and they're only going to get $5,500. Where's the rest going to come from? And this is why you need to know your EFC earlier. So when you file the FAFSA, you're also going to be eligible as a parent to get the Parent Plus loan. Now, or what I call predatory lending by our US government, because of the origination fee, which also dropped by, it was 4 point, oh gosh, I wrote it down, but like 4 cents you might have saved or something. But so that origination fee, if I was still doing mortgages, and I tried to charge 4 points on a mortgage, I'd get my hand slapped. I'd probably get a fine and maybe get thrown in jail. So I really, other than the fee, this really isn't too bad of a loan for a parent to take on. Right now, the interest rate, 5.3% for this year. It does have a lifetime cap of 10.5. So each year, these loans are reassessed on July 1st for, whatever, if the interest rate is going to stay the same, go up or down. It's determined by the Treasury bond note. It is unsubsidized, so interest starts accruing from day one. It's credit score driven, but you can have a lower credit score and still be able to qualify as long as you don't have any serious dings like a bankruptcy or your late payments on your debts, or you have a tax lien. It could be good. Another problem with this is it's just in the parent's name. So I hear from many parents that say, well, my student knows this is the only way that I can get a loan. So, but they're going to make the payments. Well, just be aware, if they can't make the payments, or maybe they get mad at you and decide that they're not going to make the payment, it's always in your name regardless. So you're fully responsible for this. And then the private student loans, the FAFSA really doesn't have anything to do with that. You can go to any lender. You don't need to show them your FAFSA or anything of that nature. So do you have an FSA ID yet? You're going to need an FSA ID, which is your electronic signature. So you're going to go to fsaid.gov, and it's going to bring you to this page here. create your FSA ID account.
And Luann, I'm sure you'll go through this, but there were a lot of questions. Do I need it? Does my child need it?
I was just gonna go right
I've
into
got multiple kids this year. Do they each need? Okay, so I
Yep.
know you're going to cover it.
So one parent in the household needs it. Doesn't matter if it's the mom or the dad. Whoever is going to be managing all of this should probably be the person to get the one FSA ID for the parent. Your student needs a separate account of their own. If you have triplets, they all need their own individual FSA ID, because the most important thing that you have to realize is the FAFSA is individual. It belongs to the student. It has nothing to do with you other than you're paying the bill and you have to put your financial information into it. But the FAFSA belongs to the student. And you can have 5 kids in college at the same time. Each one has their own individual FSA ID.
Oh, so Luann, this was a question, sorry, that came up was, does it matter which ID that's created first?
No.
Yeah.
No, but you don't start filing your FAFSA without the FSA ID. So you need to have, and it's going to take, it's going to take a couple of days, because this information, you create your username and password, and please write this stuff down. And the password is very case sensitive. But also, if you see at the bottom of the screen, there's challenge questions. Write down, take a screenshot, I don't care what you do, but you keep that information, the challenge questions and the answers. If you forget your password, which you will, and your students absolutely will, that's going to be the easiest way for you to go in and reset a password. If you don't remember your challenge questions, you're going to go through a more difficult process. And usually you're trying to file the FAFSA at the last minute, and all suddenly, oh my gosh, I don't remember what my FSA ID is. I didn't write it down, blah, blah. I got locked out because I've tried it too many times. And, so don't do that to yourself. Please write it down.
So Luann, there's a question also about how long is a parent FSA ID valid for? So a woman said that she had created it for her older student in 2015. Should she still be using the same one?
Sure, it's your identification. It's tied to your social security number. So it's yours. It doesn't belong to anyone else. You may have to renew your password, because typically the passwords, sometimes they say that you have to renew it a year from now. I've seen, sometimes passwords go for 2 years, 18 months. I guess it's random, but you will have to renew your password. But this is your electronic signature. It's tied to your social security and, the IRS.
So what if as a parent, you're not a US citizen, but your student is?
Good question. So as a parent that is not in the system, you won't be able to get an FSA ID. So you're going to have to, but your student can. You can still complete the FAFSA. You're not going to be able to sign electronically, but your student can. And then you're going to have to print off the application and mail it in. Eventually, they're going to need your signature, but it's not going to prohibit your student, if they're a US citizen, to be able to get federal aid. Okay.
Okay.
Good question. And resetting your password. So make sure that you use an email that you're going to have that it's not tied to, don't let your kids tie it to their high school email or such. Use a personal email, because this is gonna last you for a long time, and especially your students, because if they're taking on the federal student loans, this is all tied to this. It's going to, your FSA ID is going to be tied to your loan servicer within the federal aid system as well. And that's how you'll log in to keep track of your loans.
So
And
Luann, somebody's asking, I'm just curious what your opinion is. Can you put a parent email address in your student's FSA ID? So just in case the student's doesn't pay attention to email, and so it comes to the
what do you mean, just in case they don't pay attention to their email? I had a student that he didn't open any of the emails from his school that just kept sending it to him. He almost lost out on $9,000 of grant money.
Yeah, so this is just a side comment, but this is very important this time of year, or this whole year, when your student is a senior and that when they're in college, they need to check their email. They just do.
Yes, it is imperative from now until they walk into their campus dorm next year, hopefully.
Well, and even after that, because if they,
yeah, I mean,
because the bills are going to come to them and all this stuff. Okay, but that's another topic.
So, but no, you cannot use the same, your email for your student. You can, you have to have a separate email. So if you want to create, say, another Gmail account, but just realize that that is going to be the email that's going to be tied to their federal student loans, and the National Student Loan Service forever. So, you just have got to hit those kids over the head with a 2x4 and let them know, and I shouldn't have said that, we're recorded, but you've got to get it across to them that, hey, you're going off to college. You might not like to check your email, but it's going to be a part of adulthood, because the colleges send emails and they don't send them to the parents. So we're using 2019 tax return for the fall 2021 FAFSA. So it's always prior. And I know it's very confusing. It took me several years of counting on my fingers to make sure that I was doing the right thing. So what will you need in addition to your tax return? Your W-2s, 1099s, anything financial for you and your student, bank statements, any untaxed income, if you're receiving child support. Just because it's not on your tax return doesn't mean that it doesn't go on the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is not a mirror of the tax return. It just takes a lot of data from the tax return, but child support needs to be disclosed as unearned income. So you just need to grab your financials, know your social security number, as well as for your student, especially, let's just say that your student earned income in 2019, but they didn't file a tax return because they didn't make enough money. You're still going to have to disclose that W-2, that money. I put this up ahead because I knew that there's probably so many of you that are really panicking because you say I have to use 2019 tax return, but now my income is so totally different in 2020. And, I need to let the schools know. But you have to go through this step. You have to use the 2019 tax return. And so I always tell my students, everybody always asks, how many schools should we be applying to? It could be 2 to 10. 10 for me is the maximum. But I know people, their kids have had 20 or more schools on their list that they're actually submitting a FAFSA to. So, that's a lot of schools to send extenuating circumstances to, and if you don't even know that they've been accepted. So my suggestion is go ahead, file your FAFSA, get all of your documentations ready so that when you get those announcements of acceptance, then you can reach out to the financial aid office at the college. It has nothing to do with FAFSA, nothing at all. So it's the college financial aid department that you would reach out to. Now, first, go to their website and look under the section for forms, and you'll find out many of them have their own form to that they require if you're going to submit for special circumstances or such. If they don't, then contact financial aid department at the college and find out what's their process for documenting and getting them the information for your change in circumstances. And it's not just income. If you've had substantial medical, and I'm talking substantial, not, oh my gosh, I had to pay $1,000 out of pocket for the year. I'm talking, $10,000 plus. Then as long as you can document everything, that's okay. And for those of you that, maybe you've got older children, you're on here because you've never filed a FAFSA before, and now you find out your cash flow isn't the best. You can still file a FAFSA for 2020-21 until June 30th of 2021. So yes, this is very confusing. The FAFSA itself has a deadline into the future, but you have to file your FAFSA according to the deadline of your college that you're applying to, and possibly your state if you're going to try to qualify for a state aid. So be aware of those deadlines. If you're not going to qualify for any financial need-based aid, it's not a super hurry. Like it shows there, you can still file much later if you find that you have to, use a loan. And that goes for Parent Plus loan too. And I won't go into it, but there's quite a unique strategy to be able to use something like that. So I was on a call with the federal aid department the other day. I was sorely disappointed on what they announced, but the basic changes, we'll be discussing the Schedule 1 in your tax form, and we'll get into that on a slide where you can read it and we'll discuss it. Now, the parent asset allowance reduction, and George Snyderman and I had a response going back and forth, and I understand because I see the charts that the asset allowance went up a little bit, which was nice. It's been going down for years, but this is what the federal aid department disclosed the other day, that which is why some people, I don't know where they're getting the calculation from, but it's going to show that if you had everything was exact as it was last year and you see an increase, then it's because they've something in how they calculate that allowance has changed. Someone asked earlier, the FAFSA forecaster, is it gone? Yep. No explanation. No, why are we getting rid of it? So many parents use it. No, we just get rid of it. And last year was a really big deal for the mobile app. My Student Aid mobile app. And half of the webinar the other day was on all the changes to the mobile app, but then they said that you can't use it right now for the 2021-22 filing because it's not finished yet, and it won't be finished until sometime in December. So if you go to use file your FAFSA on your mobile app, which I would never consider doing myself, fat fingers make a lot of
I can't even text without making mistakes.
No. So, when you're talking, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, why risk that mistake? But now I lost my train of thought.
About why would you file on the mobile app?
If you go ahead and try to file, it's going to direct you to the desktop application. So, so stay tuned for sometime in December when they're going to update that. They've had updated help topics, which is really nice. So now when you go to the FAFSA.gov and looking for help, sometimes they're going to be highlighted so that makes it easier for you to see where exactly do you have to, where's the information that you're looking for. So I thought that was a really great change that they did. And there's a lot more resources. So, they're on Facebook. They've got Facebook at Federal Student Aid. They're on YouTube with a lot of, very boring video tutorials sometimes. And they're on Twitter. So, everything is now under the umbrella of studentaid.gov. So the FAFSA.ed.gov and all that, everything's going to come under studentaid.gov. And my personal favorite, what I call the FAFSA hotline, the 800 number, 1-800-433-3243. They're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern time, Saturdays and Sundays, 11 to 5 Eastern. They're closed pretty much all federal holidays. My cautionary tale to you is if you call and get an answer to your question, wait a few minutes, call again, and as long as you get this, 2 people giving you the same answer, you should be okay. Sometimes it might take you 3 to 5 or more calls before you get several same answers. So you just have to be just don't take the first answer.
Luann, there was a question, and I remember that I thought this was an issue at one point. Somebody asked, does the name have to be like exact? Like, when you type in the name, does it have to be exact to anything? Like, should they be using middle initial or not? Does that matter?
On the FAFSA?
Yeah.
Or on when they connect the DRT?
Actually, well, this person was asking about on the FAFSA to like other things like the College Board or your college application, but I guess maybe, I'm just kind of broadening the question.
As long as it's, as long as you stay consistent, because this is going to follow a lot of different things. If you've got your middle initial on College Board, well, then that's going to go on your CSS profile. And which should also be the same on as what you have for your FAFSA and your FSA ID and such. So it should be consistent. So
it doesn't matter, but you should just make it consistent. Like you don't, just decide if you're going to use the middle initial or not.
Right. Okay. And this is what the last year's mobile app looked like. So I just used last year's screen. I would never use the mobile app myself. I don't even have it on my phone. So I don't even know, but it is going to look much different when they do finally get it all together. Okay, so let's get started here. This is when you go to, where are we going? studentaid.gov. Okay, so you go to studentaid.gov, and this is, you're going to complete your FAFSA form. If this is the very first FAFSA that you're going to file, and let me just say, so I've been doing this for a number of years, and I file the FAFSA for my clients. We go through everything, before it gets submitted and such, but that's a courtesy that I do for my clients. I would never, remember Bruce earlier in the presentation, he let his son do his FAFSA, which had so much misinformation on there. This is, in my opinion, is so important that it needs an adult. So I know that they say, well, your student should have their part and you have your part, and then you both are going to sign individually. That's fine if you want to have your student a part of this. Do it together. Be sitting at the kitchen table and do it together so that you know that all of the information is right there and correct. Don't have them doing it on their phone at the school, or sitting at the gym or something, and you have no idea what they've input. My personal take on it. So going back to here, if this is your first year filing, you're going to hear, new to the FAFSA process. If you filed last year or 2 years ago, you're returning user, you're going to log in with the same FSA ID and password. If it comes up and says you need to update your password, it's going to either ask you, give you a chance to use your questions, security questions and answers, or if you set it up, it'll send you a text to verify that it's you, and you can go forward and do that. So on that page, there's other resources there. Find FAFSA help, and down below, understanding aid, completing the process, and all of that. So there's a lot of resources there for you. Take your time and go through this slowly. So you're going to log in. You're either going to log in as the student, which is what I do all the time. I log in as the student and get all the information in there. Or if you're going to let your student do that, they log in, I am the student, and you're going to log in, I am the parent. So as the student, they're just going to ask for their FSA ID and password. If you're logging in as the parent, you're not putting in your information. You're now going to put in your student's name, their social security number, their date of birth. That's why the FSA ID was created, so that you don't have to continually be inputting that information into, online sources. So that's why I suggest you as the parent handle this, or do it with your student. You're going to get this disclaimer. Either accept. If you decline, you're not going to file a FAFSA. It's just that simple. So now you're going to come to that page, and it gives you two choices. So remember, if this is for next fall, it's 2021-22. The reason that that has the 2 up there is because there are people that haven't filed yet for this term or the spring. That's why it's there. I saw, people were asking about it on the page this morning. Very, very, very important. create a save key. This is going to come up. Once again, if your student is doing this without you, make sure they know to create a save key, because if you don't finish this in one go, or you have to go back and make a correction or such, you're always going to have to put in whatever your password is for your save key. I keep it very simple. It's the first name of the student, all lowercase. Maybe your child, if they only have 2 or 3 letters in their name, put the last name instead, but just keep it simple enough that it's something that you'll always be able to remember. You want to make sure, if you look at the top of this screen, this slide, personal information for the student. And in the middle, because the FAFSA belongs to the student, you and your always, unless otherwise noted, refers to the student. So you don't there's going to be screens for the student and screens for the parent. Don't get them mixed up, or you're going to have a real mess on your hands. Now, this was the question about the state aid earlier, Debbie. So please pay attention. If you live in Iowa, Minnesota, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, or Vermont, you want to make sure that when you get to the confirmation page at the end, and I'm going to point this out to you, you have the ability to have all of your information transferred into your state aid application. You're only going to have one opportunity to do this. One. How do I know that? I don't live in any of those states, but my buddy Bruce from the beginning lives in New York, and he completely blew off, he said, somebody said it's there, but I didn't see it. We skimmed. So if you're in one of these states, make sure that you don't miss this step. It's very important. It will save you a lot of grief. Student selective service, that was a discussion today. If you're a male, it needs to be done. If you don't register, not only will you not be able to get any federal loans or federal aid, I saw that if you work for the government, if they don't find out until years later, once they're doing a clearance, that you never registered for selective service, you'll get fired. I never knew that. So it's very serious. It doesn't mean that they're going to go off to Afghanistan or get called up. They're not in the military, but unfortunately, this is something that's never changed, and that just is how it is. So if they're 17, they can't register for selective service. They're going to answer no and say, yes, I want you to register for me. It saves you a great amount of hassle. If they're 18 and they haven't registered for selective service because they didn't know, just say, yes, I want you to register me. It's pretty simple.
Luann, this is a question, sorry, about the selective service. What if the student is 17 now, but they'll be 18 when they go to college?
If they're 17 now and you're filing the FAFSA, because you're on this call, you say, are you registered with the selective service? No, because you're not, you're 17. When they turn 18, it could be in 2 months from now, they'll automatically be registered as long as they check yes here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could be 16 and be an advanced student going off to college. If you're a boy, you're going to say, no, I'm not registered with selective service. And yes, I want you to register me. They won't register you until you're 18.
And what about for a female?
It's not required. It's never, like other countries, they, women in Germany, go into the army, or drafted or whatever they call it. But in the United States, it's still just males. Okay, so if your student was a foster youth, yes or no. But the highlight for this slide is the highest school completed by parent 1 and parent 2. And throughout this, you're going to see parent 1, parent 2. Once again, stay consistent. If the parent who, what I always do is the parent who has the FSA ID is parent 1, and it just stays the same throughout my whole process. So, but if you started at college and you didn't finish, don't think that it's going to be detrimental to your child's application. It actually, if both parents went and didn't finish, they're going to be, the first in the family to go to college. That could be a check mark for a little bit of grant money or a scholarship or such. But don't lie either. If you graduated, you got your associates, you have a 2-year degree, you went to college, because community college is college. That's why they call it community college. So don't lie about it, but don't try to say, oh geez, I don't want to appear that I didn't go to college. You went and you didn't finish. It's just that simple. Searching for a high school. The only reason, so many of parents don't really know the full given name of their student's high school because they're so used to the nickname or the abbreviation. So make sure you know the full name, because it's actually going to be a search and it's going to show up in there, and you have to select which one is your student's high school. Searching for colleges. So this is where you can put up to 10 colleges on the FAFSA form. And you're going to, it says, do you know their federal school code? Most of us are not going to know, and that's fine. You don't have to go searching for it. You can just put your state. You don't even have to put the city, but if you know the school's name, and once again, the full given name, not Tech for Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech won't come up. It's going to be Virginia Polytechnical, whatever. So this way it will, it will bring up a list of the schools in your state. If, let's just say you've got 3 or 4 schools that you're applying to, that you're going to add to the FAFSA that's in the same state, you can just bring up the state schools and go through the list. And so you're going to, the school will come up, you'll select it, and down at the bottom, it says add more schools. So you can add up to 10 schools. And it's probably going to get asked in the chat, but you're no longer, when you file the FAFSA, do the other colleges know which colleges you're applying to. They don't see that anymore. That changed a few years ago. So it stays private. Now, if you have to add more than 10 schools, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. One, at the end of this, when you submit your FAFSA, you're going to get the confirmation page and the student aid report, and it's going to give you the DRN number, data retrieval number. You can take that number and you can call the 1-800-FAFSA and give them that number, and they can add those additional schools to your account. Without that DRN number, they're not going to do it. You can call the school that you would like to have added and give them your DRN number, and they'll add it for you. Or you can have a little bit more control you can go back in. It's going to take about 3 to 5 days for your first filing of the FAFSA to get processed, where FAFSA processes the information, sends it off to the schools. So about 5 days later, you can go ahead, log back in and delete the schools that you had on the FAFSA and put the new schools in and submit those. So, there's several different ways of doing that.
And you don't need, somebody's asking, do you need to know all 10 schools to start the FAFSA? Not at all.
No. So let's just say, I even talked to somebody today. He said, I don't know what schools we're going to apply to because I don't know how, if we're going to be able to afford it. So I told him, you know what, you just need to file your FAFSA and find out what your EFC is. And then, I told him the formula and he was a very stubborn gentleman, so, but you can, if you've got 1 or 2 schools on there, it'll get sent. And let's just say, a school contacts your son or daughter and offers them some, hey, if you file, put your application in and you visit us online or something, you'll get a $500 scholarship for getting it in by a certain date or such. Colleges are doing a lot of things right now because they need to fill seats. So you can go in and make a correction and add another school. So it's not a big deal. And then you want to, it's gonna ask you as far as your housing plan. Are you gonna live on campus? Are you gonna live with your parents? Or are you gonna live off campus? And this little view college information, you can click on that and it's gonna bring up data on the school as far as, the tuition and whatnot. So just a little bit more data for you to have at your fingertips. So student marital status, and you're all saying, what do you mean married? Just remember, there's adult students that are, using this as well. Some of you may be the adult students also, you've gone back to college. So they're either, and this is how they're finding out too, is the student a dependent student or independent? So I'm single. I don't have any dependents that, that I support. So no to those answers. I'm not in the military. I'm not a veteran. My parents have not died. If they answer no to all of these questions, you just check none of the above. And then, were you homeless or self-supporting or at risk of being homeless? If any of these questions are yes, you answer yes. So let me go back here. Let's just say that you're a guardian for a child, then yes, and then it goes into a different series. And I apologize. Usually I've put these together so that I'm in the FAFSA and I can, kind of give examples of what if this was yes and what if this was no. I didn't go into the FAFSA today. I've had one of those days that it was just nonstop since 4 o'clock this morning. So, but, if you should run into an issue where you have to answer yes to any of these, you can check out the resources. You can call the 800 line and they'll walk you through it. It's, just don't panic about anything. Just be, common sense, just ask for help. So if you've answered no to all of those questions, and I'm saying I'm talking about you're answering for your student, or if there are students listening to this, you're, with your parent side by side. These questions are about the student, not about the parent. So if you answered no to all of those, then yes, their student is a dependent student, and they're going to provide information about my parents. Now we get into the parent side of things. So, are you married, remarried, divorced? It opens up, a lot of different scenarios. If they're going to want to know, the date that you got married. But if you've been divorced, they also want to know the date that you got divorced. And it's interesting, most of the moms that I've worked with, they have to look for the dates of their divorce. I've never been divorced. I would think that that would be, a date that you would remember forever. So, so have that information handy if you don't have it locked in your mind. So parent information, if you see it's highlighted, parent, but also first parent. Once again, who's the first parent that is going to be consistent on the application? And then you notice father, mother, or step parent. So if you have remarried and you're going to include your spouse's information on here, even though they're the step parent of your child. If you have, if you've never been married, but you and your partner are the biological parent of your child and you all live under the same roof, you're filing as if you were married. It's if you're a single parent and you're divorced, or maybe you never got married, but the other parent is out of the picture, you have nobody else's information to add to here. You're the sole person on this. You have full custody. If you've got joint custody and everybody gets along quite well, kids are going back and forth and whatnot, and it's kind of like a 50-50. If there's one of you that makes substantially more money and assets than the other, and it's not going to be detrimental to the child, have them stay with the parent legally a week or two more during the year so that you can legally be the person that's going to file the FAFSA with your parent income and assets. So that you can have, possibly have a lower EFC, possibly be able to have some grant money, who knows? So, that's a big question that comes up a lot.
So Luann, there's a question somebody had. What if I remarried? Do I still need to put in the divorce information for my ex-husband?
No. So if you look back, it says married or remarried on this line. So now you're married again or remarried. But if you've divorced and you've never remarried, you're going to put your divorce date on there.
Oh, somebody's asking, sorry to hear that, but what if you're widowed?
There's a section. It will say married or remarried, widow, and I'm sorry for that, but yes. Okay. So legal state of residence, have you lived there for 5 years? They're trying to establish, in-state residency. So this is one household size. So it has really nothing to do with who you have as a dependent on your tax return. So it doesn't matter if one parent has the dependent 1 year and the next year they're on the other parents. It has nothing to do with that. So it's your household size. So let's just say you have a blended family and your two kids are living under that roof, all the time. And then your new spouse has two kids that visit every other weekend and spend a fair bit of holidays and providing, maybe 50% of their support. They technically are part of the family. So you can include them even though they don't live there full time. And even though you're not declaring them as a dependent on your tax return. Same thing if you have a parent, an elderly parent that has now living with you and you're taking care of them. If you're providing a roof over their head and their food and whatnot, and which would maybe be more than what their Social Security income provides for them, you can add them as a household member. So that is a calculation on the FAFSA, how they come up with your EFC. Now, don't go out and, ask 5 people to move in with you that have, no relation to you, because it's just not going to work that way.
Luann, there's a good question. What if you provide economic support for parents who are not living in the same house?
So you know what? Let me double check on that. Because it's household size. It's
a good question, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't
well,
specify.
no. Your parents' other children, even if they do not live with your parents. So that's for children. So that would be a good, you see that highlighted dependency status question?
Yeah.
That would be a good place to look. But we'll get that answer and post it on the Facebook page.
Okay.
Remind me.
Okay.
Okay. So this is where we come to the fun stuff. So now you've finished and you're ready to start putting in your financial information. So you see down at the bottom, it says link to the IRS. This is the link that attaches to the data retrieval tool, the DRT. So I'm going to give you my disclosure. I've spoken with many of my peers across the country, and we're all in agreement, and I have been ever since they came out with the DRT. I personally don't file anybody's FAFSA for the first time using the DRT. Even as simple as it can be, I don't use the DRT. I go through the manual calculation, manual submission, submit it. I know all the numbers are there. We can look again and make sure that everything is correct. Later, once the student has been accepted at whatever schools, we'll go back in, make a correction, and file using the data retrieval tool.
That explain why, because somebody's asking, what's the downside of using the DRT?
The downside is you have no idea what data has been submitted, because all it's going to say is transferred by the IRS.
So you can't see it. You can't see the individual piece, like information, and what is being answered in each question.
Not a number at all. So, I don't trust it, especially if you've had a rollover that year or other types. If you've got a business, I've just seen I've had so many people come to me, I use that DRT and look at what my EFC is, and I
can't figure it out. Yeah.
Your EFC is going to be high. Any way you look at it, it's going to be higher than what you're expecting. But you always have that in the back of your mind. I wonder if this is correct or not. So this
So-
way, you know it's correct, and then you can go back in and use it if you.
So explain a little bit more, what's the value of going in later and kind of like making a correction and then using the DRT?
So the colleges, now that this thing was developed, they're saying, oh, well, this means that the information has come from the IRS. So now your tax information is verified by the IRS. So they're not going to ask you to upload your tax return into the iDoc, or maybe ask you to get a tax transcript. It doesn't mean 100% that they're not going to ask for those things, because you could get caught, chosen for verification and still have to take those steps. But in a couple of years, I found out the other day, which is once again why it's important for you to keep your FSA ID. It's tied to your social security number and whatnot. In a couple of years, they're developing where you go in to start to input your FSA ID, go to the page to start the FAFSA, and your tax return has been automatically imported, and you have you're not going to have any control over that. I'm hoping that that's never going to happen, but they're talking about doing that. I'm not a fan of the DRT, but if you choose to go ahead and do it, you just click on the link to the IRS, and it's super simple. It's just going to open up a window. You're going to be leaving this site and going, to the IRS. Do you approve? You click yes. And then it's going to take you to a page. It's going to have some of your information, your name. You want to make sure that, some of your information is there. I'm trying to picture in my mind now, but the most important thing is that what it's asking for, your name, your address, especially, that it is the exact thing that is on your tax return. If you spell road, ROAD, and your tax preparer put it as RD, you put RD. If they misspelled your name, your tax preparer misspelled your name, you misspell your name when you're inputting the information to be able to get the DRT, because it has to be exact to what the IRS has in their files. You click on it, and it either comes back and says, oh, is correct, and you can click again and you authorize the transfer. If it comes up that there's an error and we don't have your information, it means that either you misspelled something, or maybe you had an amended tax return, or you're unable to file electronically because of fraud. Somebody got a hold of your social security number. You'll never be able to use that DRT. So you want to know how to do this manually regardless, if you're going to run into that kind of a situation. So if you choose not to use the DRT because somebody listened to me out of the 800 people that are on here, it's going to bring you, instead of clicking on, let me go back here. Instead of clicking link to the IRS, it's going to have, a next button. You click on the next button, it's going to bring you to this page. Are you sure you don't want to do this? It really makes it so much simpler. You just click on no thanks, and then it will take you into the manual input. And goodness gracious, they have directions right above where you get the information, what line item that you're going to get it from, so that you can input that information. Just take your time, go through it line by line. It tells you exactly what they're looking for. And just parent one, parent two. You know, it's either going to come off their W-2, or maybe if they had some additional income, 1099 or such, you're just going to add it all up. They're telling you exactly where to get the information.
So Luann, let's just stop for 1 second and summarize again, because it's still a lot of questions on this idea of not using the DRT the first time. Why, and then why go back in after they're accepted to do it again. And I'll just summarize, and maybe, you know, you tell me if this is correct. But basically, the bottom line is, if you use the DRT, it pulls the information directly from the you know, tax system, and you do not see what gets pulled. You know, you cross your fingers, you assume and hope that it is correct, and maybe in most cases it is, but you just do not know for sure. And so, but if you go in and manually put your information in, so you say, as Luann just went through, that you are not going to use the DRT, you obviously know exactly what's going in to the system. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Luann, at a later point, if you want to make corrections, you can always pull up the manual information that you input. If you use the DRT, you can never pull up the manual information. You can never pull up the information within the system. Don't you? Only like at the financial aid office, they might be able to pull it up.
So you can't change any of the IRS information. If you had found an error that you overstated an asset or such, and you've got documentation to prove it, you can go in and make that correction. But you cannot correct anything that has been transferred by the IRS. So if you, so let me follow through. You manually do the DRT. You go back in, you know, after your student has been accepted at schools, and you're going to use the DRT at that time. And the numbers come up different, and it's much higher EFC than what your manual was. Now, something is wrong, because you're not changing anything. You can't go in and change your assets or such, because, you know, it's as of the date that you filed.
So somebody's asking, kind of along with your example, when you go back in and you've done it manually, you go back in, you pull it up, and you run the DRT at a later point, it overwrites whatever you put in manually the first time. Is that correct?
Correct. So if the EFC is the same, you're good to go. But if it's different, you've got the documentation right in the FAFSA system that you filed, and now there's a substantial difference in your EFC. The only one that can go in and see where the error is and make the correction is the financial aid department at the college. Don't call FAFSA.
Right.
But I will tell you, this happened with a client. So we called the school. The school said, well, you have to call FAFSA. We can't change that. Call FAFSA. And they say, well, we can't change that. You have to call the school. So you might go back and forth until you ask for somebody who knows what they're doing at the school. And it's usually the head of the department that is going to be the one who's authorized to be able to go in and see what needs to be corrected. So it's a real pain. I just don't like the fact that it's transferring. You have no idea what's been transferred at all. You're not seeing any numbers. You're just seeing transferred by the IRS, that statement all throughout your FAFSA, where you should have had income and other information.
And honestly, I can't remember if you mentioned it yet or not, but the real reason, another important reason, what did you highlight the specific situations that you really absolutely should not use DRT?
Well, we'll get to that in
Okay,
just a
fine.
second.
Okay.
But yeah, I did mention, if you've had an IRA rollover, and just go and think with all of the changes, the financial tragedies that people have had in the last 6 months, and there's a lot of monies that are being moved and whatnot that you never would have thought of using. And how is that going to have an impact on your taxes and whatnot? It's going to get confusing. So you don't want to just have some system just transferring that has been known to have big time glitches, more so than FAFSA. So it's, that's why I refuse to use it. On the first filing, I still go in and use it afterwards, just for the peace of mind of my clients, thinking, oh geez, but we didn't, and it says that we should. It's not mandatory that you do it, and there's thousands of people that can't file using the DRT because they can't file their taxes electronically. They haven't filed their taxes in years. They had to get an amended tax return. There's a lot of reasons why people cannot file the DRT. And if your information doesn't match up with the IRS and Social Security. And sometimes you don't find that out until you hit the DRT. So there's a lot of different ways. Are we done with the DRT?
I think so.
Okay. So one of the big changes from last year to this year is due to the Schedule 1 in your tax return. And, because remember, a couple years ago, we had 3 different tax returns and whatnot. Now it's just one, and we have the schedules. So, I'm going along and it's, do you have a Schedule 1? And I'm saying, nobody's got a Schedule 1. What is a Schedule 1? I hadn't seen it yet. So they've made some exceptions. So if you didn't file a Schedule 1, then you say no. But if you did file a Schedule 1, only to report unemployment compensation, educator expenses. I know that there was a teacher on here earlier, an IRA deduction, student loan interest deduction, Alaska Permanent Fund dividend, or virtual currency. If those are the reasons why you had to file a Schedule 1 on your tax return, you can say no to this question. If you've got capital gains and losses that were on the exception list last year, they're no longer on there. So, and in addition, it's now a question that can be transferred from the IRS DRT. So unless you're doing the manual, it's not going to be an issue. But do I want to take the chance that because they've changed these exceptions, that the IRS is going to, the DRT is going to transfer the correct information? I'm not willing to take that chance myself.
So Luann,
Yep.
one more question of just maybe explain, do you think it's okay in subsequent years to use DRT like straight off the bat, or should everybody do the scenario that you're describing each year?
If you have just a normal normal tax return, normal job and whatnot, nothing extraordinary happened in that particular tax year, go ahead. All I can say is if you suddenly see a substantial difference and what your EFC was the year before, then I would question. Just don't take it for face value. I just do it as a, it's just a part of my system so that I have checks and balances. So not to, not to pay unnecessarily.
Okay.
You don't have to listen to me if you want to do, because it's a simple click the button, go ahead. But I don't want to see all the complaints on the Facebook page that I did the DRT and wow, my FAFSA, my EFC is really high.
We definitely see those stories more than, like where somebody says, I did the DRT and I got a crazy EFC. I can't believe it. And then it turns out that they had an IRA rollover and that got counted as income and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Or you're financially blessed. You make a good income. You don't think you do because you live in an expensive area. You've got assets. Your EFC is going to be high. It just is what it is. So did I answer that? Yeah, just once again, you're just follow the directions. This is, IRS Form 1040, line 14 minus Schedule 2, line 2. What does it all mean? I'm not a tax person, but, we can all read and just follow directions. Now, this is where you see I've got highlighted untaxed portions of IRA distributions and pensions, but exclude rollovers. If you had a rollover, and let me explain what a rollover is, some may not realize. So let's just say you had a 401k from a previous employer. You're at a new employer and you rolled your 401k over into their plan, or you rolled your 401k, your old 401k into an IRA or, an annuity or whatever. That's going to show up on your tax return. And if you include it, it's going to show up as income. You didn't take that income and you've already, it's already been assessed earlier. So it has no place here on the FAFSA, but because it's part of the IRS and they have to disclose it on your tax return, when you use the DRT, it's automatically going to include it. So if you've got a $500,000 rollover, that's $500,000 of additional income that gets added to your EFC. And if you got 500,000, that's assessed at 47%, in addition to your regular income. So that's why I don't use the DRT. So here, the first question, child support your parents paid. So there's two separate screens here, one for child support that you've paid, and then the next one is child support you have received. So no, child support is not on the tax return. It doesn't matter. It's still you still have to include that on the FAFSA. And then the third question down, payments to tax deferred pensions and retirement savings. So this is where you're going to add any contributions that you made to qualified retirement accounts, your 401ks, 403bs, IRAs. It's going to show up from your employer, it's going to show up on your W-2 in box 12, 12A through 12D, and the different codes D through H. But the double D is usually the healthcare premiums that your employer is paying for you. You do not add that double D. So I've seen, a lot of families that have mistaken that for their retirement contribution. And, sometimes that adds quite a bit, $25,000 for the healthcare premiums. So just be cautious of that. And then other untaxed income not reported, such as workers' comp, disability benefits, etc. If you see that little question mark at the end of the row, you can always go to that question mark for any question, and it will bring up a list of what is it talking about? What exactly do I have to disclose here?
So Luann, there's a good question. What if the answer is 0, or you don't have an answer for that question? Do you still have to put in 0?
Yes, you see that they automatically have zeros there. So you don't have to add anything more to it. If it's a 0, it's already there. Please don't start yawning, Debbie.
Sorry.
Okay, so here's a question. Do you want to skip questions about your parents' assets? What it means is that if your income is under $49,000 and you have met a couple of other things, like maybe you've had to have school lunches or some sort of federal program to help you get by and such, you get to a point where you don't have to disclose your assets. So this is a very good thing. It's called the simplified test. I'm sorry, I'm getting very tired, so I can't think straight. But let's just say that you've suddenly received an inheritance of a pretty substantial amount, and which is a financial blessing. You have very low income. If you qualify for that simplified needs test, you don't have to disclose that that asset, because that asset would then skyrocket you out of being able to receive, financial need in the form of, the Pell Grant or the subsidized loans. You're not going to get $1 million. So all of the people that say, well, that's taking money away from other students, it's built into the system. So, stop guilting people for thinking that they're taking money away from other people when it's just in the system. Take advantage of it. There's not going to be anybody there helping you because you overpaid, because somebody, died and left you some money that could probably, support you in retirement. You have no other retirement assets, but then you overspent it for college because you felt that you had to. It was taking money away from somebody else. Nobody else is going to be there to help support you in your retirement. And that's my soapbox. So now, if you have a family-owned business, completely 100% family-owned, and less than 100 employees, you do not have to disclose those assets for your business. If you have a partner that is a non-family member, then that means that you have to disclose your half of the business assets. But if it's a complete family ownership, you don't have to disclose that, as long as it's 100 or fewer employees. And do not include the equity in your home as an asset. If it's your primary residence, you don't have to disclose that. If you have rental properties, yes, you have to disclose those. If you have a vacation home, you have to disclose that. You're going to take whatever the equity is, subtract your mortgage, and then, or I'm sorry, take the value, subtract the mortgage, and that's the equity asset. It's not, so don't forget that if you do carry a mortgage, you can subtract that from the value of your home. And don't overvalue. you know, go to Zillow or, you know, talk to a realtor friend or such, and just be very conservative. Don't lie about it. If you have a $500,000 home and you say, oh, the value is only $50,000, they're going to know different. So you're going to do the same thing again for your student if they filed taxes. So do I do the DRT for student? Yes. I mean, they've made a couple of $1,000s. It's going to be pretty easy to see if there's going to be a mistake or not. But if they earned income and didn't file taxes, you still have to report that income. They're going to have a W-2. I didn't repeat all of the student because it's just the exact same same screens. You will have to, this is where you would put if they, what did they earn if all you had was the W-2 and you didn't file taxes. Same thing, untaxed income from, and remember, some of these students are adults, and that's why these questions are there as well. Student assets. If your student has $10.15 in their savings account or their checking account, you put $10. You don't have to put the 15 cents. You know, people say to me all the time, oh yeah, they only have like 150 bucks. You put that information there. It doesn't matter. If you don't, you're considered lying. It's a federal form. Are they going to give you a $25,000 fine if you don't report your students $10? No, but you know, they want to see that because it's very suspect. The student is in college and they don't even have anything to their name. Then you know, you're going to be setting yourself up for verification, and then you have to, you know, show up with statements and whatnot. So application was successfully saved. Every time you go to the next screen, it saves it. But let's just say that you get midway and you've got to take the kids someplace and you're not going to be able to finish. You can just go ahead and save it. And it's going to, you go to log out. It's going to say, you know, did you save? Go ahead and save, and then you're good and you don't lose all of your information. So this, are you a preparer? You know, it is rare, but there are companies out there that they just file taxes, FAFSAs. So they would put their EIN number in there. So even me, I mean, I do FAFSAs and CSS profiles, but I don't do it by myself. I do it with my clients where, you know, and they're doing the filing. So I'm not truly a preparer. I'm just doing it for them. Make sure that you take make a copy so that you have that for your records. You can save it to a PDF or print it off, but keep a copy. Will you always be able to go back in and see what you did? Yes. I'm just, you know, because I'm doing other people's, I always save a copy. I like to have paper in my hands. So now we come to the signature, and this is where there's the student signature and the parent. This is your FSA ID. So let's just say you've completed the FAFSA, you were logged in as a student. When you logged in, you use their FSA ID and password. You're already in the system. So it's going to bring up this agreement of terms. You're just going to hit agree. If you hit disagree, all that work was for nothing. Sign the FAFSA. You're just going to click as the student, and student signed with FSA ID. You don't have to input their FSA ID and password again because you're already in the system. But now it's the parent. So here we go. Is it parent 1 or parent 2? Once again, stay consistent so you don't get mixed up. Agree to the terms. And now this is where you're going to put your FSA ID and password in. And it's got to match up with whichever, if you're parent 1 or parent 2. Sign it. Now it brings you to the screen. Possibly you don't have an FSA ID. So you have 3 choices. Sign it with the FSA ID, print a signature page, or submit without a signature, and you will eventually need to return later to sign it with an FSA ID. If you don't have one, print the signature page and you have to mail in your signature. So you've provided everything. Now you're ready to click submit. So you hit that submit my FAFSA now, and this is where it says, congratulations, you submitted your FAFSA. You see the DRN number up at the top, and you're looking, where's my EFC? It's not on this page, but we're at this page because remember, this example was Iowa. So that's why at the bottom, it says start your state application to apply for Iowa state-based financial aid. Iowa and the rest of the states that we said earlier. So this means that those states must have, they give out state financial aid in the form of grants. That's where you want to make sure your state monies are the monies that can run out. The federal funds are not going to run out, but it's the state grants that can. So that's why you want to not stay up last night until 5 minutes after 1 when the system came on. You can still wait a couple of days, but for some states that money will go fairly quickly. You're not going to run out of the federal monies. You're not going to run out of the federal Pell Grant money. So you still don't have to rush. But if you have a state that that comes up, you want to do it fairly soon. Also, if you see, do you have a brother or sister that needs to complete a FAFSA? Because you identified how many were in college. So, it knows, hey, there's somebody else that needs to file a FAFSA. So if you click on here, it's going to transfer all of the parents' information into the other student's FAFSA, and you log in with their FSA ID and password, and then input their information, and it saves you a lot of time. So if you miss that on this page, then you're going to have a lot of extra work because it's not going to show up again. You click over to the next page before you sign out, and if up at the top you see that little circle with that number 002592, that's your EFC number. It's always going to start with zeros. I think they do that deliberately to confuse people because they see the zeros and they think, oh, that's going to be a serial number or something. That's your EFC. So in this example, the EFC was $2,592. So what does that mean? It means that that's what the government says, that through all of that data that you just input, that's what they've calculated what you're expected to pay out of pocket before you can qualify for any financial need-based aid. So if you don't, if you just swing on by this, then your student will get a student aid report in 3 to 5 days or so, but it's coming to their email and they're not going to pay any attention to it. and you're still sitting there wondering, 2 months later, how come they never told me what our EFC was? And you see that expand all up at the top. You can expand that and get a complete copy of your what was filed. And then you will see, if you use the DRT, all of that transferred by the IRS, going down line after line after line.
Oh, and do you remember, what were the states that you said, you should maybe apply on the early side? Oh, is it less? I just remember Pennsylvania because that's my state.
New York, New Jersey, Ohio. I don't remember the others.
Okay. Well,
we can swing back. Let's just finish this up.
okay.
I just left this slide from last year because it explains about the untaxed income and benefits, and what to put on, where it's asked for. So, it's just as important to know what to include as what not to include. And untaxed portions of health savings accounts. Why is that? Because that's part of your income. You're just not paying tax on it. It's tax deferred. So they're assessing your FAFSA on your income. They don't care that you've deferred or delayed to pay tax, further on down the road. They want your income. So let me just see. Don't include untaxed Social Security benefits, supplemental security income, and such. So, definitely when it comes to those lines, just take your time, look at the question mark to find out what they're looking for. And this is going to pop up. So we all have a asset protection allowance, which is next to nothing anymore. 8 years ago, a 50-year-old person, joint, two parents, and it was like $56,000 was your asset protection allowance. Now it's somewhere around 10, 11,000, if that. So it's just crazy. It's been dropping. I think within a couple more years, there won't be any asset protection allowance for parents, the same as there isn't for students. So a lot of people got confused last year. They said, well, my asset says if my assets exceed a different number, what does that mean than what we saw? It's just that number is going to be whatever your asset protection allowance is. So if you have assets less than that, you have nothing. So let's just say you have $500 to your name. You don't have to disclose that. But if you have $500 more than 19, you've got $2,400, then you have to put yes and disclose that full amount. So just real quick, this is something, we're so used to, we're so concerned about getting accepted. What is it going to cost this year? Oh yeah, I think we can swing that. I just want to show kind of a scenario of why you need to think about the full 4 years, because a lot of times we don't start thinking about that until the third year, and those loans are starting to add up if you're taking loans. If you're paying full cost, that's up to you. It's just money's coming out of your savings or your income. So I had a family come in about a month ago, and they were good savers. Dad made a good income. Mom was a substitute teacher, but they'd always saved. Had their home paid off, got money in the bank. They had, pretty close to almost this much money set aside into, a savings for college. It wasn't a 529 plan. Son said, we think, he can go to any school that he wants to. He wants to go to Johns Hopkins. So here's the average, cost of attendance, almost $74,000. So we looked at, the projected financial award. They don't give merit, and their, EFC was right around $75,000. So they're not going to qualify for need-based aid. So it's just showing the self-help is the student loans, that line there, the total of 27,000. And then the EFC adjusted is just showing this is what the parents or what the cost of attendance would be after the self-help student loan. So here we have the blue was what they had earmarked for college. The yellow is the Stafford student loans. And then the red is, okay, this is the additional monies that have to come from some place to finish paying for that cost of attendance. So if we're going to be, we're looking at year by year, taking into account inflation so that we have a true look at what exactly is this going to cost? And overall, $300,000. We've set aside $65,000. So we're going to have to come up with what? An additional $210,000, as well as our child taking on the Stafford loans. So when you see that reality, sometimes that's if you look over the 4 years instead of just that first year, and you think, wow, I didn't really realize it was going to cost that much. You want to know this information before you start making your decisions. So this screen is showing if the student, takes on the 27,000 over the 4 years. And of course, we just put the 2.75%, which is what the student loan is interest rate for this year. It's going to change some. So this figure is going to change, but it's going to be pretty close. It could be anywhere from $250 to $300. That's per month for the standard 10-year repayment. That's just for the student section. Now the parents, let's just say if they took out a plus loan, or maybe they took out an equity line, or they took a private loan. Of course, the interest rates are going to change a little bit depending on, your credit report and whatnot. Home equity lines right now are much lower than 5%, but we're still just, being conservative. This monthly payment at graduation, $2,259 per month for 10 years. That is the standard repayment for most loans, whether it's a federal loan, a private loan. Yeah, sure, your equity line, they might give you more time. You can get an extended on the plus loan, but you're going to pay a heck of a lot more interest as well. So take into consideration the 4 years, not just the 1 year, before you make these decisions, because you don't want to end up 2 or 3 years down the track and have to take your student and say, I'm sorry, we've run out of resources. We can't take on any more of this debt. We can't have you take on any more of this debt. You're going to have to step back and earn some money and maybe go back later on. And you don't want that to happen. So we've finished, we're celebrating, you filed your FAFSA, and then you're going to sit back and have a beer because you deserve it. And that's pretty much the end. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Luann.
2
That
hours, Debbie.
was amazing. Let me just ask one question, because I know this person is looking. I know there were a ton of questions, and I know guys we'll try and get to them over the next few days. But Elaine is asking, if I think I'm reading this correctly, Elaine, sounds like she's got multiple students to do, multiple kids, and so she wants to know. Okay, she's got to when she finishes like one FAFSA, I guess she just needs to then log in to start to do the second one. It's not like it's automatically going to say, okay, go to the next one. It doesn't know you've got another one to do.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Remember? God, you guys aren't listening to me.
Do you have a brother or sister need to?
Does your brother or sister need to complete a FAFSA?
I did miss that. I'm sorry.
There's intuitive something or other, built into the software.
So it's going to automatically get you to start the next one.
It's going to prompt you to be able to, okay, let me knock out. I've had triplets that I've done, and I have had numerous families with twins. This makes it so easy because if you log out and then log back in with their FSA ID for the next student, you have to do everything all over again. So if you do it like this, then it's going to auto-populate the parent's information.
Got it.
You just have to go in and put the student's information.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I've never done multiple at once. So
I've done hundreds of these over the years. So I've had every imaginable question or problem. And what was that question too that we were going to look up?
the good question. If the student is a U.S. citizen, but the parent is not.
No. The one about supporting, if you support another family member, but they don't live with you.
Right.
So, okay. I have to write it down because I will not remember it tomorrow.
Okay. While Luann is writing that down, I just want to let you know that we actually are partnering with Luann to offer really, really reasonable. If you want to have your FAFSA information reviewed before you submit, we have an arrangement with Luann that we'll send out a link for very reasonably priced. It's $99 for review. But you know what? But if you don't, and you can do, figure it out yourself from everything we provided tonight, that's great. And a lot of people can. So that you should feel no pressure that you need to get this review. But some people, as you can see from the questions, like have a slightly more complicated situation, or they just have questions. And if you want this review to kind of have that little bit of peace of mind, great. If you don't, you'll be fine too. So I just want to there's no pressure. And if you, there's no feeling of, oh my gosh, you have to get this, but we just are offering it because honestly, people have asked. So,
remember Bruce.
Right.
That's why I put Bruce's example up there. It happens. So if you had complicated things, he's 68 years old. He just saved over $120,000 that he was going to end up taking Parent Plus loans for, or taking that money out of his retirement. And we're putting together a strategy for him on, should he take the Parent Plus loans and or co-sign and such. So, there's a lot that goes to all of this, depending on age. I have a parent, he's 74 years old. He's definitely taking the Parent Plus loans because, the likelihood that he's going to die before his child is pretty strong. He's 74. He's still working to try to help his daughter get through college. If he dies, she doesn't have to pay anything. She's not legally responsible or financially responsible for any of those plus loans. So you have to look beyond just the 15 minutes that everybody says that it takes to do the FAFSA.
Right. Thank you, Luann. This was fabulous, amazing. Always. This is about, I think, the third year we've done this, and I didn't even.
No, actually, I think it's 4.
Okay, 4. Oh my gosh. And honestly, we had over 800 people on for a long time, and over 1,000 people signed up. So it's just amazing.
And I was
So-
going to say, I've got my Facebook on there. If you guys want to go and like my Facebook page, that would be really nice. But I'm very determined. I'm going to start doing Facebook Lives to give, little snippets of information. So if you've got a specific question, please don't email me. My email just blows up. But, just go ahead and ask the question on the Facebook page, and I will be checking it on a daily basis and going in to do these lives that I'm in a last quarter of the year challenge with my business coach. So we'll see how long that lasts.
Okay, everybody, we will see you soon. Everybody better get to sleep, but I guess this is where the people on the West Coast have the advantage because
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can barely keep my eyes open anymore.
So for all of you that are still hanging on there, thank you for being, FAFSA warriors.
Yep.
But stay safe, keep your family safe, and I wish you all the best.
Okay, and you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to the recording, and if you want to sit through this again, or fast forward and find your section that you want to learn more about.
And Debbie, I still have my voice.
I know.
All righty.
Okay, everybody. Good night.
And log out.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Holy moly.
Oh, I don't know if we're still live or not. Can't tell.
I haven't.
I think we might be.
Yeah, because people are saying thank you and
yeah.
So
yeah, it's still going. I don't know what I pressed. I thought I pressed good night, but
oh, somebody said, yeah, you're still live. So
okay.
You can't start talking about the audience. No, it was fun. I really do enjoy this, as tedious as it is, but people just need the information.
No, absolutely.
There's so much misinformation out there that that can end up costing them lost aid or lost opportunities and stuff.
Yep. Exactly. And as you said, if you take a little bit more time than the 15 minutes,
college has become the second most expensive purchase now. It used to be the third. Now it's the second.
Second to what? A house?
Yeah.
I think in some cases it's more expensive than a house.
Especially if you have more than one child.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the issue.
So why would you just put, 20 minutes into something that's going to have such a major impact on your financial health as well as your child's?
Right.
So, but anyways.
Okay.
Right.
Well, we will talk.
I gotta get home.
Yep. Thank you. Good night, Luann. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.